The first thing people noticed wasn't the wheelchair, it was the way the man paused before speaking, as if every word had to pass through a memory too heavy to rush. The lunchroom buzzed with clinking trays and low conversations when his quiet voice cut through the noise. "Can I share this table?" he asked. The nurse looked up, startled, and in that moment, before she could answer, something invisible shifted in the room, like a held breath waiting to be released. Sarah had chosen the corner table on purpose. After a 12-hour shift in the hospital's trauma wing, she wanted silence, or at least something close to it. The smell of antiseptic still clung to her scrubs, and her hands ached in that familiar way that came from holding too much pain for too many people. She had barely touched her coffee when she noticed him, mid-30s, strong shoulders slumped slightly forward, one leg missing below the knee, the other wrapped in a brace. His Navy SEAL cap rested neatly on his lap, fingers gripping it with restrained tension. She saw the scars before she saw his eyes. When she met his gaze, she didn't see pity there, only hesitation, and a polite courage that broke something open inside her. "Of course," she said, standing to pull out the chair before realizing he didn't need it. He smiled faintly, maneuvering his wheelchair with practiced precision. The movement was smooth, controlled, the kind that came from long months of learning how to exist again. He parked beside her, placing his tray down carefully. For a few seconds, neither of them spoke. The noise of the room seemed to soften around them, as if the world had leaned in to listen. "I'm Daniel," he said finally. "I don't usually ask, but today felt like a day I shouldn't eat alone." His voice carried a steadiness that suggested discipline, but underneath it was something fragile, something newly exposed. Sarah nodded. "I'm Sarah, and I understand. Some days are heavier than others." She didn't ask about the leg. She didn't thank him for his service. She simply sat with him, and that was enough to begin. They ate quietly at first. Daniel's hands shook slightly when he lifted his fork, and he noticed her noticing. "Nerve damage," he explained gently, not defensively. "Gets worse when I'm tired." Sarah responded with a small nod, the same one she gave patients when they shared something painful without asking for sympathy. It told him he was safe to continue, or to stop. He didn't stop. "I used to lead a team," he said, staring into his tray as if it were a map he no longer recognized. 6 men, brothers. We trained for years together. We trusted each other with our lives." His jaw tightened. The mission went wrong, not because of combat, because of a bad call. "Mine." Sarah felt her chest tighten. She had heard versions of this story before, whispered through tears or shouted through anger. Still, every time was different. Every time carried its own weight. There was an explosion, Daniel continued. "I remember the sound, the pressure. Then nothing. When I woke up, I was here. And they were not." He swallowed hard. "I lost my leg that day. But that wasn't the worst of it." Sarah reached for her coffee, hands steady but heart racing. "What was?" she asked softly. "I survived," he said. The words landed between them like a truth too sharp to ignore. "And some days, that feels like a punishment." The cafeteria noise returned in waves, laughter from a nearby table, the scrape of a chair, but Sarah barely heard it. She saw only the man in front of her, carrying a war inside his chest, fighting battles no one applauded. "Survival isn't a crime," she said, "even when it feels unfair." Daniel laughed quietly, a sound edged with disbelief. "You sound like my therapist." "I'm a nurse," she replied. "We're trained to say things that are true, even when they're hard to accept." Something shifted in his expression. He looked at her more closely now, not as a stranger, but as someone who might understand. "Do you ever feel like you're holding everyone together?" he asked, "while you're falling apart inside?" Sarah's breath caught. Images flashed through her mind. Patients she couldn't save, families she had comforted while swallowing her own grief, the night she lost her younger brother to a car accident and returned to work 2 weeks later because the hospital needed her. "Every day," she admitted. "But sitting here right now, it helps." Daniel nodded slowly. "Me too." They talked for nearly an hour. About the ocean Daniel missed, the way salt air used to calm him. About Sarah's childhood dream of becoming a painter before life pulled her into scrubs and schedules. They spoke of loss and resilience, of nights when sleep refused to come, of mornings that demanded courage just to begin. Around them, people came and went, but their table became its own quiet island of honesty. Then something unexpected happened. A young boy approached hesitantly, tugging at his mother's sleeve. "Mom," he whispered loudly, "why does that man have a robot leg?" The room seemed to freeze. Sarah felt a familiar tightening, the kind that came when innocence collided with reality. Daniel turned toward the child, eyes kind. "It's not a robot leg," he said gently. "But it helps me walk." He smiled. "Do you like superheroes?" The boy nodded eagerly. "Well," Daniel continued, "sometimes superheroes get hurt saving people. And they come back a little different. But they're still heroes." The boy's eyes widened. "Are you a hero?" Daniel glanced at Sarah, then back at the child. "I try to be," he said. The mother apologized, flustered, but Daniel waved it off. "Curiosity is a good thing," he said. "So is kindness." The boy grinned and waved before being led away, and something in Daniel's posture straightened, just a bit. Sarah felt tears sting her eyes. She had seen miracles before, machines restarting hearts, hands restoring breath, but this was quieter, deeper. This was healing happening in real time. When they finally stood, or in Daniel's case, rolled, to leave, he hesitated. "I didn't think a lunch table could change anything," he said. "But today, it did." Sarah smiled. Sometimes the smallest spaces hold the biggest moments. They exchanged numbers, not with promises, but with possibility. As Daniel wheeled toward the exit, a group of veterans nearby stood, one by one, offering nods of respect. Not loud, not dramatic, just seen. Sarah watched him go, hard lighter than it had been in months. She returned to work that afternoon with renewed purpose, carrying his story alongside her own. And Daniel, for the first time since the explosion, felt something loosen its grip inside his chest, not the pain, but the loneliness wrapped around it. Weeks later, they met again. And again. Their conversations deepened, their laughter grew easier. Healing didn't come all at once, it never did, but it came steadily, carried by shared tables, shared truths, and the understanding that no one had to sit alone. Because sometimes, all it takes to change a life is the courage to ask, "Can I share this table?" And the compassion to answer, "Yes."